So this video is going to be about how I fitted these upper and lower GIVI Crash Bars to my Africa Twin. It's a 2017 bike. I decided to do this video because I fitted the GIVI rack at the back previously, and to be quite honest, I wasn't that impressed with the instructions. I ended up having to take it off and on about 3 times while I was doing it, so I thought it would be helpful to people to do this one. And also, when I first started to do this kit, I noted that you had to take the manifold off, and I wasn't expecting that at all. Certainly looking at YouTube videos for the SW Motec and things like that, they don't appear to require that. So if you have bought yourself some of these crash bars, the first thing I think I'd say is prepare for a bit of a nightmare of fitment. If you haven't bought them, I would suggest you watch this video and then maybe watch some videos about other crash bars and how you fit them, because though the end sort of result of the crash bars I'm reasonably happy with, I thought that the instructions were very, very poor. The design of the fitments from ease of fitting was poor, and there were some faults with construction as well, which I wasn't really happy with. So, you know, buy with care basically is what I'm saying there. Anyway, so I hope this has some help to you. I'm sorry if it's a bit dark in places. I'm not a professional YouTuber. It's just me trying to help other people out. All right. So I am fitting GIVI Crash Bars upper and lower to my Honda Africa Twin 2017. It's the second time I've actually tried this. First time I tried it, I had to give up because I needed to remove the exhaust, and I wasn't expecting that. The reason I had to remove the exhaust is that the upper bars attached to these 2 bolts here, something like the SW Motec ones attached to that one and that one. Those 2 you can get to without removing the exhaust. This one here you can't get to without removing the exhaust. To remove the exhaust, you undo the manifold up there. There's a second bolt, well, 4 bolts to the manifold, and there's a second bolt here just behind the foot peg, and then up the top there's a third one up there. You also have the lambda sensor, which you can see on the bike there, which goes in and attaches just here behind the rear brake, and that just you basically unclip it by pressing at the bottom there and pulling the wire out, but that has to be taken off as well. But you can't really get in there. It's difficult to get in there until you've actually got the exhaust loose, which makes it a bit tricky because you've got to balance the exhaust and remove the sensor. So next one will be how I fit the bars. Okay, so I've attached the 2 top brackets over there and just about to attach the first engine guard. I think that's what it's called anyway. I had to take the sump guard off, and that comes off with a bolt down here, another one there. And then on this side, there's one that is, you can see one that's there, and then there's a little catch right underneath the bike there, but it just pulls off there. If you look on the actual sump guard itself, you've got, there we go, 2 front bolts, 1 side bolt there, and this is where it just slots on here. Okay, so I've fitted temporarily the first of the bars at the side here. Bolts there, absolutely fine. They just go per instruction. Down the bottom here, there's 2 bolts that go in there. They hold on this bracket that holds these pipes. I'm not sure what those pipes are, but anyway. This one, hand tightened, absolutely no trouble at all. This one got quite stiff as it was going in, so I gently used an Allen key to make sure that it was just a little bit too stiff for like me to do it by my fingers, and it went in fine, but it was, you know, you may find you have the same problem. So GIVI appear determined to make me take as much of the bike apart as possible. So this is the next piece to go on. It attaches there on the bar and there on the engine mount. But of course, to get that engine mount out, that's a bloody great bolt that goes from there all the way through to the other side. And this bit of casing needs to come off. It looks like it's just held on by a screw there and a screw there. So I can give that a go and see how we get on there. So the casing did come off with the 2 screws, got the bolt out fine, and I have fitted that. I haven't put the bolt on the other side yet because I haven't finished, and it's a bit dark there. Attaching this bolt here, so this bit of metal here to this one, the bolt itself, it's the first one I found that it doesn't seem to fit perfectly. It's very slightly threading it, not enough to completely thread it, but the welded nut on the back just isn't quite right. But it should go together fine, but you'll kind of have to use that nut, or I'll have to use that nut for that bolt every time, or that bolt for that nut every time. You couldn't interchange them afterwards. Okay, so here's another annoying thing. So if you look at this diagram, this is the next bit I'm doing, and it basically says here we have to use bolt number 18. That's good. Okay, here is the list of parts that you get. Bolts. So we've got 14, 15, 16, 17, absolutely no 18. And I've just looked through, and essentially the same thing happens on both this, the lower set, and the upper set, where it describes a set of nuts, sorry, to use that just aren't even in the packet. Hopefully I've got something that I'll be able to use instead. So I have got this on, and I have done it by using the original bolt and nut. Well, not the original bolt, so the original nut from the bolt, which I removed, and it's the same thread size, and that seems to solve that problem. Okay, so I'm about to fit this bracket, which goes down here just below the brake lever. Getting the bolt set is fairly easy, but again, I don't get any nuts for these bolts, but the original nuts appear to fit, so that I assume is why they actually say nut number 18 when there is actually no nut number 18. So that's the bottom bar on the right hand side on. A couple of little tips about this. You fix it with the 2 bolts behind the brake lever there, and the 2 up on that bracket there, and then this little bar here that I put on earlier on, that goes on last. What I found was if I tried to fix those 2 bolts first to hold the weight, and then fix those 2, it was really difficult to get the bolts into those nuts. Whereas if you start at the very back, did that end one, you get that in reasonably easily, that one reasonably easily. These 2 were a lot more difficult because you really had to kind of like force the frame into place, but you've got a lot more maneuverability because you've got the flexing. If you haven't tightened this joint behind there yet, you've got the flexing of that lot to help you cope with it. Okay, so I am now starting on the top set of crash bars. The first bit to fit is this bit here, and it needs to go up between the front forks, and there's these 2 bolts here. The instructions don't make it very clear, but the bottom one goes into a nut which is welded on, and the top one goes into a nut which is at the top there, and which does come off, and you have to reuse the nut that's on the top there. Okay, so now what I'm doing is fitting this bar that goes between the crash bars at the top and the crash bars at the bottom, and it's held in place by these 2 brackets here, top and bottom, there and there. And what these are meant to do, I don't know whether I'm going to be able to show this properly, but these have a interlock which meant to go together like that, and then the interlock holds it together at the bottom, and then the 2 bolts and nuts hold it at the top. The problem comes, you interlock it like that around one of the crash bars, go around and put this bar through, and you can see there's a lot of play between them, awful lot of play between them. This is the nut that's meant to go through, and it just simply is not long enough to go from there all the way through to there and then tighten up while keeping this thing locked. So my solution is I've found an old nut which is plenty long enough, and I put it in there, and I'm going to try tightening it down to get it into place so I can then put the other nut, the original proper nut, in, and then the proper nut in on that side. So we'll see how it goes. So this has worked really well. Basically I've got the long nut on there, I've tightened that up a little bit, and I've put another nut and bolt there that is a spare one, and you can see that I've already fitted this bottom one of them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten this up so it's nice and tight, then I'll tighten that up hand tight, then I'll remove this one, putting the top proper bolt, black bolt, and then once I've done that and got it tight, I then remove this one and put in the top, or the proper bolt and nut there. Worked really well on the one below, should work fine on this one as well. Okay, so the last thing to do for the assembly, to get every bit in, is to put one of these with a couple of rubber bits there and the screws there into the end of the crash bar there, so it fits into this pipe here. So luckily I never tighten all the bolts, but the bolts are sort of hand tightened, but you can kind of see I've put this in this end okay, but trying to get that into there is going to be a right pain. So hopefully you won't have tightened every bolt in the thing, because it's going to be fiddly to get this in. So in trying to fit this bar, I've had to remove the whole lot again. Trying to fit it has been a pain in the backside. On this side, you can fit the fitment fine, and though it's kind of hanging loose at the moment, you can see that if I move it, it will fit in there without any trouble at all. Basically, it fit onto those bolts it's meant to fit onto, so that's all fine. On this side, I don't know if I'll be able to show you, but basically down here I've now got it lined up with the bolts. I put it in there, and these two holes are going to line up, and they do not. The hole there and the hole there. So the only solution I've got is to drill another hole slightly further round, which is rubbish. So I have drilled a hole. You can see it's kind of extended down now there. I'm going to put the screw in. The screw fits fine. That should allow it all to line up. We'll see how we go. I'll have to take the screw out before I finish tightening everything up, just to put a bit of paint on there to stop it from rusting there. So all the parts are now in place. I've put everything on this side as well. Nothing's quite tight yet. You can see everything's in place, but if you look at the bracket down here, at the moment I've got two very long bolts in because it's quite tight, and that's quite a long way for it to tighten up and pull in. So what I'm going to do as my last kind of hurrah with this thing is I'm going to start off by tightening the bolts up here, because if any pressure that pulls these apart is going to be really difficult to kind of put back together and push it back together once they're in place. And then I'm going to tighten up these and then go around and do all the rest of the bolts. So we'll see how it goes. All right. So the bars are finally on and the exhaust is back on and are working fine. I had one issue, which was that I had turned the ignition on when the lambda sensor was disconnected, and the bike therefore set the engine management light off. What I found was once the lambda sensor was reconnected, I started and ran the bike for a couple of minutes and then turned it off and then started again, and it worked fine after that. So that was about it. The tension for the manifold bolts, I looked online and they were 20 Newton meters, so really quite loose, but they got torqued up. That's about it really. So I hope you found this useful. If you do have any questions or anything like that, feel free to contact me.